so I'm certain that what I saw and heard last New Year's Eve wasn't the result of a hallucination or drunken stupor. It was 100% real. I live on the outskirts of a small southern town, and one of my closest friends, Darren, lives in a wealthy neighborhood deep in the boonies. Every year, his family throws a New Year's Eve party, and I always look forward to it. This year, however, the night took a horrifying turn. The drive to Darren's house is always eerie. The narrow, unkempt country road is surrounded by dense trees, and the darkness is almost suffocating. I usually avoid using my brights, but that night, I had no choice. About halfway there, my headlights illuminated something ahead, a figure standing motionless on the side of the road. It was a woman in a white dress, her back to the trees. She wasn't moving, just standing there, completely still. The dress was inappropriate for the cold weather, and something about her presence felt off. As I passed her, I glanced in my rearview mirror and saw her turn to face me, still frozen in place. My stomach dropped, but I kept driving, telling myself it was just my imagination. The party was fun, as always. We rang in the new year, and I stayed behind to help clean up. By the time I left, it was late, and my car was the only one left in the driveway. As I started the engine, a low tire pressure light came on. I remembered that cold weather often caused this issue with my older car, so I decided to risk the drive home. Big mistake. Not even a few minutes down the dark road, my car came to a dead stop. I got out to inspect the tires and found all four shredded, as if clawed apart by some animal. Panic set in as I realized I was stranded in the middle of nowhere, with no cell service. Then, the silence hit. The wind died, the trees stopped swaying, and even the wildlife went quiet. My heart raced as I heard a twig snap nearby. I turned off my phone flashlight, hoping to blend into the darkness. That's when I heard it, a soft, eerie voice from the trees. "I see you." My blood ran cold. I turned my flashlight back on and aimed it toward the sound. There she was, the woman in the white dress. Her gown was now dirty and stained, her hair disheveled, and her face, grotesque. Half of her jaw seemed to be missing, yet she was grinning at me. I didn't wait to find out what she wanted. I sprinted back toward Darren's house, the sound of her footsteps close behind. I made it to the house and pounded on the door, begging to be let in. Darren's family took me in, and we called the police. The officers searched the area that night, but found nothing. The next morning, Darren's father discovered a rusty knife in the yard, presumably used to slash my tires. The police also checked an abandoned shack I'd passed on the way to the party. They found no one, but the surrounding woods were littered with dead, gutted wildlife. The woman was never found, and to this day, I have no idea who, or what, she was. I still go to Darren's New Year's Eve party every year, but now I always carpool and take the long way home. A creepy taxi ride. When I was 26, I took a trip to San Diego to visit a friend. My return flight landed at midnight, and by the time I got to the ground transportation pickup, it was 12:30 a.m. I waved down a taxi and gave the driver my home address. He offered to take me for $30, which seemed like a good deal. The ride started normally, but things quickly took a creepy turn. The driver kept staring at me through the rearview mirror and made inappropriate comments, like asking if my friend in San Diego was as pretty as me. I tried to brush it off, but his questions became increasingly personal. Then, he missed my exit. I pointed it out, but he apologized and said he'd take the next one. By the time we got off the highway, I was on edge. He continued to flirt, asking if I had a boyfriend and even demanding to know his name. I put in my headphones to shut him out, but I could still feel his eyes on me in the mirror. When we stopped at a red light, I noticed a police car parked nearby. Without thinking, I grabbed my bags, slid the van door open, and bolted toward the officer. The driver yelled after me but didn't chase me. The cop agreed to drive me home, and I was relieved to be out of that situation. But the nightmare wasn't over. The next day, my neighbor George called to say someone claiming to be my dad had tried to get into my apartment. I called my dad, and he confirmed he hadn't been there. That's when I realized the taxi driver had my address. I went home to pack a bag and stay with my parents, but as I was leaving, I heard a voice from down the hallway, "I wasn't going to hurt you." I froze, then bolted out the door, screaming for help. George and his wife came rushing outside, and we called 911. The police arrived and searched my apartment, but the intruder was gone. The back sliding door was open, suggesting he'd fled through the backyard. Unfortunately, I had no record of the taxi ride, so I could only describe the driver and his yellow minivan. I stayed with my parents for a week, and my dad helped me install security cameras and bought me a taser for self-defense. I've since moved to a new apartment, but I still avoid taxis, especially when I'm alone. To this day, I wonder if that driver was even a real taxi driver or if he was someone far more dangerous. Either way, I'm just grateful I made it out of that situation unharmed. New chat. Friday the 13th, a day of misfortune and tragedy. Friday the 13th has long been considered a date cursed with bad luck. For many, it's a day to indulge in spooky activities like watching horror movies or visiting haunted houses. However, this year marks the first time since 2017 that Friday the 13th falls in October, making it an even more eerie occasion. In honor of this, we're diving into some of the most terrifying events that have actually taken place on this notorious day of bad luck. The death of Tupac Shakur. Tupac Shakur, one of the most influential rappers of all time, met a tragic end that has left a lasting impact on the music world. On the night of September 7, 1996, Tupac was in Las Vegas celebrating his business partner's birthday. After attending a boxing match with Suge Knight at the MGM Grand, Tupac's car was ambushed at a stoplight. A white Cadillac pulled up, and an occupant fired multiple shots into Tupac's vehicle, hitting him 4 times. Tupac succumbed to his injuries 6 days later on September 13, 1996, a Friday the 13th. The case remained unsolved for decades, with suspicions pointing to Suge Knight, rival rapper Biggie Smalls, and others. However, in September 2023, 60-year-old Dwayne "Kef D" Davis was charged in connection with Tupac's murder. While Davis is not accused of pulling the trigger, he is alleged to have orchestrated the hit. The trial is still ongoing, keeping the mystery of Tupac's death alive. The Andes plane crash. On Friday the 13th, October 1972, a plane carrying 45 passengers and crew, including members of the Old Christians Club rugby team, crashed in the Andes Mountains. The crash killed 12 people instantly, with several more succumbing to injuries and the harsh, freezing conditions in the days that followed. The survivors faced unimaginable horrors. Stranded in the mountains with no food or shelter, they resorted to cannibalism to stay alive. After 72 days, 2 survivors, Nando Paradu and Roberto Canessa, embarked on a grueling 10-day trek through the mountains to seek help. Their bravery led to the rescue of the remaining 16 survivors. This harrowing tale of survival and resilience has been immortalized in books and films, but the tragedy remains a stark reminder of the dangers of the Andes. The Aeroflot 217 crash. On the same Friday the 13th in October 1972, another plane crash occurred, this time in Russia. Aeroflot Flight 217 was attempting to land in poor weather conditions when it crashed just 3 miles from the runway. All 164 passengers and 10 crew members perished, making it one of the deadliest plane crashes in history. The exact cause of the crash was never determined, but human error and the severe weather conditions were likely contributing factors. The coincidence of 2 major plane crashes occurring on the same Friday, the 13th, has only added to the superstition surrounding the date. The Costa Concordia disaster. On Friday the 13th, January 2012, the Costa Concordia cruise ship struck a rock formation off the coast of Giglio Island, Italy. The ship, carrying 1,022 crew members and 3,206 passengers, deviated from its course to perform a maritime salute, a maneuver that brought it dangerously close to the island. The collision tore a 174-foot gash in the ship's hull, causing it to list and partially sink. While most passengers were rescued, 33 people lost their lives. The ship's captain, Francesco Schettino, was heavily criticized for abandoning the ship prematurely and leaving hundreds of passengers behind. He was later found guilty of manslaughter and sentenced to 16 years in prison. The Costa Concordia disaster remains one of the most infamous maritime tragedies in modern history, with the total cost of the incident estimated at $2 billion. The Ralph family murders. In one of the most horrifying crimes to occur on a Friday the 13th, David McGreevy brutally murdered 3 children on April 13, 1973, in Worcester, England. McGreevy, a family friend, had been babysitting the Ralph children, Paul, Dawn, and baby Samantha, while their parents were at work. After drinking heavily at a local pub, McGreevy returned to the Ralph home and, in a fit of rage, killed all 3 children in a brutal and senseless act. He later mutilated their bodies with a pickaxe. McGreevy was arrested and sentenced to life in prison, where he spent 45 years before being granted parole in 2018. The Ralph family murders shocked the community and remain a chilling reminder of the darkness that can lurk behind seemingly ordinary individuals. The tragic death of Daz Baxter. Sometimes, even trying to avoid bad luck on Friday the 13th can lead to tragedy. On Friday the 13th, 1976, Daz Baxter decided to stay in bed all day to avoid any potential misfortune. Unfortunately, his plan backfired when the floor of his apartment collapsed, killing him instantly. This bizarre and tragic incident serves as a grim reminder that sometimes, no matter how cautious we are, fate has other plans. The Black Friday bushfires. On Friday the 13th, January 1939, Australia experienced one of its deadliest natural disasters, the Black Friday bushfires. The fires, fueled by extreme heat and drought conditions, ravaged the state of Victoria, destroying over 2 million hectares of land and claiming the lives of 71 people. The devastation was immense, with entire towns reduced to ash and thousands left homeless. The Black Friday bushfires remain one of the worst fire events in Australian history, and the fact that they occurred on a Friday the 13th has only added to the superstition surrounding the date. The Buckingham Palace bombing. On Friday the 13th, September 1940, during the height of World War II, Buckingham Palace was bombed by the German Luftwaffe. The attack, part of the Blitz, saw 5 bombs dropped on the palace, with one exploding in the courtyard and another damaging the royal chapel. Miraculously, King George VI and Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother, were unharmed, but the bombing served as a stark reminder of the dangers faced by civilians during the war. The incident, occurring on a Friday the 13th, has since become a part of the palace's storied history. The murder of Kitty Genovese. On Friday the 13th, March 1964, Kitty Genovese was brutally murdered outside her apartment in Queens, New York. The attack, which lasted over 30 minutes, was witnessed by numerous neighbors, none of whom intervened or called the police. Kitty's murder sparked widespread outrage and led to the development of the psychological concept known as the bystander effect. The tragedy, occurring on a Friday the 13th, has become a symbol of urban apathy and the dangers of inaction. The Great Flood of 1953. On Friday the 13th, January 1953, a devastating flood struck the Netherlands, Belgium, and the United Kingdom. Caused by a combination of a severe storm and high tides, the flood claimed over 2,500 lives and caused widespread destruction. In the Netherlands alone, over 1,800 people died, and tens of thousands were left homeless. The disaster, occurring on a Friday the 13th, has since become a pivotal moment in the history of flood prevention and coastal defense. Don't forget to subscribe to Nightmare Vaults for more chilling tales and eerie encounters. Hit that notification bell so you never miss a story. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.